Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime on AniMonolith. Let's jump right back into the action. With Tempest currently under a truce with Yuki, Rimuru decides not to kill Laplace, and instead turns his attention back to the screen monitoring the battle with Calgurio. The scene shifts to Calgurio's camp. It's been 2 days since he sent 100 elite troops into the labyrinth, and still not a single word from them. Staring at the gear spoils of war, Calgurio bitterly realizes he's been baited. The labyrinth's treasure wasn't the prize. It was a trap laid by Rimuru. And more than that, Calgurio is beginning to seriously fear defeat. Just then, an officer enters with a report. Someone from the Magic Tank Division has arrived. That someone is Misha, a subordinate of Yuki and one of the 3 leaders of Seros. Yuki had tasked her with infiltrating the army to observe Calgurio's actions. While she was officially assigned as a staff officer, Calgurio had strategically placed her and the Magic Tank Division in a peripheral support role. But now, with the Tank Division wiped out, Misha returns to convince Calgurio to retreat. She delivers devastating news. Both the Magic Tank Division and the Air Division were completely annihilated. Calgurio is stunned. Even when Misha tells him these are Yuki's orders, he stubbornly refuses. He's clinging to hope that his 100 elite troops, each equipped with a resurrection bracelet, are still alive. But then Misha drops the real bombshell. Those resurrection bracelets won't work. They're just prototypes, and since the resurrection feature is based on a unique skill, they can't be reproduced properly. Deep down, Calgurio knew it, but hearing it out loud leaves him in silent despair. He finally accepts the reality. He underestimated Rimuru and focused too much on Veldora. He'd fallen into the Demon Lord's trap from the very beginning. But retreating now, that would go down as one of the most humiliating defeats in Imperial history. In desperation, Calgurio places his final hope on Major General Minutes, a seasoned commander. But before he can finish his thought, a bloodied officer walks into the tent. The man is Krishna, ranked 17th among the Imperial Guardians, one of only 3 survivors out of the 570,000 troops that entered the labyrinth. He had been granted an original resurrection bracelet by the Emperor himself, which is the only reason he's still alive. Minutes is dead? Kansas too. The labyrinth devoured them all. I'm the only one left. The revelation hits Calgurio like a hammer. Even his most trusted elite have fallen. Worse, the one who killed them wasn't Rimuru or one of his 4 heavenly kings, but a Magin named Zegion, a member of the Elite 10. His power was so overwhelming that Krishna, an elite in his own right, knew he stood 0 chance. Krishna urges an immediate retreat, not out of cowardice, but as a desperate act of survival. His words shake the staff to their core. Misha adds fuel to the fire, revealing that the devastating attacks weren't even from Veldora, but from 2 mysterious individuals using nuclear-level magic. And on top of that, she hints there may be another storm dragon aiding Tempest. That's the final straw, Calgurio snaps. Gather the troops, we're pulling out, returning to the Empire. Of course, he avoids the word retreat. He calls it a strategic redirection, lying to himself in a last-ditch attempt to preserve morale and pride. But it's too late. The gears of fate are already in motion. The Imperial Army's fate, sealed. As tension gripped the Imperial Command Center, a calm, piercing voice cut through the air. My lord has decreed, you shall not be allowed to retreat. The voice belonged to an old man in exotic garb, sword at his hip, his hair white and tied back, his posture upright, and his eyes sharper than steel. He was Ajera, a loyal subordinate of Carrera. Rimuru had granted the Empire one final chance for surrender, a last act of mercy. Agera's arrival was not only to convey this offer, but to buy time for the Tempest army to finish mobilizing. And his presence alone silenced the entire command tent. His aura, the pressure he exuded, was absolute. When one soldier dared to ask if the Lord referred to Demon Lord Rimuru, Agera said nothing, only issued a single cold ultimatum. Disarm, surrender. Lay down your weapons and you will be spared, as slaves. With that, he turned and began to leave. But Calgurio, the supreme commander of the Armored Corps, couldn't let that be the end. Wait! Please, wait! Stopping Agera in his tracks, Calgurio pleaded, not just for his pride, but for the 170,000 troops who remained under his command. Surely slavery is too harsh. I ask only for mercy. Let us return to our homeland. I swear we will never invade again. Let me return and propose an alliance between our empire and Tempest. Together we could rule the world. It was his last desperate attempt to save his army and perhaps spare the Empire total disgrace. But Agera was unmoved. You dare set terms in your position? Your fate was sealed the moment you rejected Lady Testarosa's mercy. Now choose, resist or surrender, but don't even dream of running away. With that, Agera left the tent. Silence fell like a hammer. Then, two more figures entered the tent. Bernie and Jiwoo, the rogue warriors who had once infiltrated Tempest. They had returned, having narrowly escaped the labyrinth. When they learned of the situation, both of them advised them to retreat. But Kalgurio still insisted on leading 170,000 troops to fight Tempest. But this time, it was not to win, but to survive. Fighting until the last moment was the pride of an imperial soldier. Thinking so, Kalgurio set up his battle formation. As for Misha, Bernie, and Jiwoo, they were smart enough to know that this was a collective self-destruction, so they retreated. As for Krishna, he wanted to fight alongside Kalgurio. And so, the battle began. Above the battlefield, Carrera floated calmly in the sky, ready to unleash her most powerful spell yet. She was preparing to use gravity collapse, a devastating form of nuclear magic. But before the real attack, she wanted to do a test run, a flashy little fireworks show, as she put it. On the ground below, her loyal follower Esprit, a high-ranking demon who had served her for years, was cheering her on enthusiastically. Unlike Agera, who was always the voice of caution, Esprit constantly encouraged Carrera's whims and usually left the responsibility for cleanup to Agera. So, when Agera returned from his mission as a peace envoy and saw Carrera prepping a spell in the sky, he panicked. "Carrera-sama, please wait. You can't do this yet." Rimuru had clearly ordered that the enemy be given a chance to surrender. Kalgurio had been granted 1 hour to make his decision. Agera knew full well that if Carrera acted prematurely, she might trigger the battle before Rimuru's deadline. And Rimuru's wrath wasn't something to take lightly. Trying his best to avoid being vaporized for lecturing his superior, Agera used the most careful and concise language possible. Carrera, however, was not convinced. Agera's tone was more like a grandfather patiently explaining to a wild child than that of a subordinate. But just as it seemed he was making progress, the Imperial armies suddenly began to mobilize, a blatant violation of their agreement to wait an hour before resuming hostilities. Seeing this, Agera's face darkened. So this is how they answer our mercy. And with that, Arara, who had just been trying to uphold the rules of warfare, gave Carrera the green light. Do as you please, make them regret it. Carrera's grin widened. Her excitement peaked. You got it! I'll show you something I've never pulled off before. With her magic at full capacity, Carrera began chanting Gravity Collapse, the most destructive spell in her arsenal. This wasn't just nuclear magic, it was black hole-level annihilation. By compressing the abyssal core, Carrera created a localized supergravity field that collapsed in on itself, crushing everything in its radius. In layman's terms, she conjured a miniature black hole in the center of Kalgurio's army. And then the sky darkened. From above, it looked like a jet-black pillar stretching from the ground to the heavens, sucking in light, matter, and hope itself. The soldiers below didn't even have time to scream. Shields, barriers, magic resistance, none of it mattered. Of the 170,000 troops under Kalgurio's command, only about 20,000 survived, and even they were fleeing in sheer panic. Carrera's attack was so powerful that had she not deliberately contained its range, the entire Jura forest could have been erased. Agera, watching this unfold, was stunned into silence. He'd told her to do it. He'd greenlit the massacre. And now all he could think was, oh no, what have I done? And so, the battle was effectively over before it even began. Tempest hadn't just won, it had obliterated the opposition. And Agera's long-suffering days of keeping Carrera in check, they had only just begun. After witnessing Carrera's devastating attack, Geld could only laugh bitterly. Looks like there's not much left for the rest of us to do, he muttered, half joking but fully impressed. Still, he didn't underestimate the Imperial remnants. There were over 20,000 survivors, and they were now charging out of desperation. Geld, ever the commander, immediately deployed the full force of his elite troops. The 17,000-strong Yellow Corps, each one protected by his unique skill, Protector. Not only were they armored in virtually impenetrable defense, they also carried recovery potions accessed via the Gourmet skill, a shared stomach space linked to Geld himself. The two forces clashed head-on like tidal waves crashing into each other. Meanwhile, on the left flank, Shion's elite fan club, the Yomageri, joined the battle. Numbering 10,000 powerful Magin, each blessed with the extra skill Mortal Fear, they struck terror directly into the enemy's soul. And leading their charge were Dogrul's three sons, embodying raw physical might and Yuki in giant form, tearing through the ranks like avatars of destruction. Elsewhere on the right flank, 20,000 warriors from the Beastmaster's Warrior Alliance, led by Alvis and Zor, made their entrance. They fought not for strategy but out of loyalty and gratitude to Rimuru. They poured everything into the fight, pushing back the enemy with overwhelming force. In the midst of the chaos stood Momiji, commander of the Red Corps. "It's time," she said calmly. "Let's put an end to this. I'll send our enemies off with the flames of mercy." Using the Red Corps' synchronized Yuki resonance, Momiji activated her signature spell, Heavenly Beast Red Flame. A massive red lotus bloomed in the sky, raining down flames that burned through oxygen, sapped enemy strength, and rendered them unconscious before death. It wasn't as destructive as Carrera's gravity collapse, but it was elegant and final. Within moments, the last 20,000 Imperial troops on the right flank were completely wiped out. "Disappointing," Momiji sighed. "I thought they'd last longer." And just like that, Tempest's forces had completed a flawless annihilation. The decisive battle was over, and Rimuru's army stood unchallenged. Inside the command tent, Calgurio was in total shock. Watching his army get annihilated in an instant, his mind went blank. Fear, despair, and regret overwhelmed him. Tears streamed down his face. Wealth, honor, power, none of it mattered anymore. All he wanted was to survive. If it meant surrendering to Demon Lord Rimuru, so be it. Even if he had to become a slave, that was better than death. And maybe, just maybe, he could buy enough time for Misha and the others to escape. But it was already too late. "Surrender, is it? That'll be troublesome. First, you'll have to play with me for a bit." Diablo had arrived. No one saw how or when he entered. Clad in his butler uniform, he exuded an overwhelming aura. Just from that presence alone, Calgurio knew they had no chance. This wasn't someone they could ever defeat. Trying to keep his composure, Calgurio started a conversation, hoping to stall. Thankfully, Diablo enjoyed introducing his name, a name gifted to him by Rimuru himself. "I am Diablo, a loyal servant of Demon Lord Rimuru-sama." But Diablo hadn't come alone. "Trying to buy time, are you? Too bad. I already took care of that." With a smile, he pulled two bodies from the air and threw them to the ground. They were Bernie and Jiwoo, single digits, among the most powerful soldiers in the entire empire. Krishna screamed in horror. The two had been taken down. If they didn't stand a chance, what hope did anyone else have? Panic spread through the tent. Some tried to draw swords, others shouted to fight. But none of them truly understood what they were up against. "Do you think such lowly beings can challenge me?" Diablo snapped his fingers. The tent was blown away, revealing a horrifying sight. Outside, the corpses of 2,000 soldiers lay scattered, motionless, like dolls drained of life. "You're the last ones left," Diablo said coldly. Then, with another snap, Krishna and the remaining officers collapsed instantly. Calgurio screamed. The despair was too much. His pride shattered, his soul cracked. All that remained in the command tent was Diablo, smiling quietly. He had tracked Krishna to the enemy camp and found Bernie and Jiwoo there. They had potential, perhaps borrowed power they hadn't fully mastered, but still, they were no match for Diablo. He spared Misha knowing she was under Yuki, Rimuru's current ally. But everyone else, he used End of the World, a spell that ripped out souls without a sound. "Interesting," Diablo muttered, watching Calgurio awaken to power out of sheer despair. He saw potential. A man broken by guilt and failure, now reaching beyond human limits. This is what it means to be strong, Diablo thought. But for Diablo, strength wasn't for vanity. It was to serve Rimuru. And now he had found a worthy opponent, even if only briefly. When Calgurio emotions spiraled, fear of Diablo mixed with rage at the slaughter of his comrades. That fury ignited something deep within him. In that moment, Calgurio awakened. He transcended the sage level and became a saint, a being on par with an awakened demon lord. Memories flashed back, Rudra's cryptic words before the invasion. Calgurio finally understood. The Emperor had known they would lose. The true purpose of the mission was to awaken those worthy enough to break their limits. "I was such a fool," Calgurio muttered, realizing too late what Rudra had intended all along. But there was no time for regrets. He activated his mythical-grade divine armor, a sacred relic only the top 4 in the Empire were permitted to wear. Calgurio charged straight at Diablo. He punched with a speed that broke the sound barrier, his gauntleted fist carrying enough force to obliterate even spiritual beings. He had read the intelligence reports about the 4 heavenly kings of Tempest. He knew Diablo's name, but he had never imagined someone this powerful. Still, now that he had awakened, he was no longer afraid. With this power, even Diablo can be defeated, he believed. But Diablo caught the punch with ease, calm and disappointed. Too soon, he said. You haven't even mastered your power. Even if Calgurio had awakened, he lacked the experience and control. Diablo knew it. It wasn't a fair fight, it was barely a fight at all. Diablo subdued him effortlessly. The divine armor couldn't synchronize with its user. The saint-level energy was unstable. Calgurio had the strength, but not the understanding. And Diablo, a true master, exploited every flaw. Such a shame, Diablo said. Had you matured your power, perhaps it would have been more fun. And just like that, Calgurio fell. His soul was taken, his body discarded. The commander of the Empire's most elite army, the final remnant, was gone. The battle was over. Tempest had claimed total victory. And that wraps up this chapter of AniMonolith's summary. In the next video, we'll witness the aftermath, how Rimuru bestows the gift of Demon Lord evolution to his followers. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.